And I'm not even sure I can turn on the mic here. So what does it mean to be different? That's it's kind of what my novel's about. The title of the novel is Boy with Wings. And it's about this boy that has these strange appendages on his back, and he ends up in a freak show in the 1930s, traveling around the South. And it touches on issues of race and religion, but more than anything about what it means to be different. So we're going to talk about that some today, and I want to tell you how honored I am to appear with Danny Bedrosian. And after hearing that, I'm like, do y'all really want me to talk? I mean, let's just listen to this. So we're going to do this today. It's a little bit, one of the great things about Word of South, we do these one-of-a-kind things. So this is completely unrehearsed. Danny and I, we've talked about this, but we've never done it. We may not ever do it again. But just a little bit about Danny, because he's going to join me at the end, and we're going to jointly do some Q&A. So this is the best story. So Danny, his parents were classical musicians. He's trained a classical pianist. At the age of 11, he told his parents he wanted to be the keyboardist for Parliament Funkadelic. And today he is the keyboardist for Parliament Funkadelic. And tonight he's going to be appearing with George Clinton in a specially curated show that Danny curated, and it's the 70th anniversary of George performing professionally. And again, this is a one-of-a-kind thing, and I don't know if it's ever going to be done again, so I hope you guys will stick around and see that. It's for free in the amphitheater. And Danny's trio, he's doing like 3 things today. His trio is going to start this off, I think, at 6 o'clock, right? And if you're not sick of seeing me, Danny is Armenian-American. If you're not sick of seeing me, I'm going to be back here at 3:30 with the mega best-selling author Chris Bajalian, another Armenian-American. We're everywhere. So I hope you'll come back. I think that'll be fun. But let me turn it back to Danny. He's going to play a little more here. I'm going to read a little bit from Boy with Wings. I don't really like reading at book events. I don't like sitting through readings at book events necessarily. The only time I've ever been to the AWP conference, the big writers conference, they had these headline speakers in the afternoon. So I go, and the first one was Marilyn Robinson, and she was excellent. But the second woman, whose name I've forgotten now, stands up and says, I'm going to read the first 30 pages of my novel in progress. And you could hear like audible groans from the crowd. I'm like, so I'm not going to read 30 pages. And with these lights here, I'm sort of blinded, so it might be even shorter than I planned. But the beginning of the book, and I assume most people probably haven't read the book yet. Some of my friends that have read the book said, "Oh, this is really dark." I'm like, "Well, it's not that dark." But it's so the beginning of the book, the boy Johnny, he's born in a rural part of North Florida, and he has these strange things on his back, and people come to find out about it. And there's a sickness that goes around, and some other children in the community die. And so people blame Johnny. There's something wrong with him. There's a weirdness, and his family's threatened. So his mother, she has some friends who are former circus performers, and they kind of concoct this plan, with some, special tricks that he dies and that he's going to be buried, and it's a fake death, and they hope this buys them some time to continue on there. So I'm going to read from the end of that chapter that describes this. This is the first chapter in the book. And this is from the point of view of the boy, Johnny. He cries again loudly. She won't like him crying. He has friends, pretend friends, Robert and Buster, and for a time they talk. He asks what they are doing, Buster listening to the radio, Robert playing with his toys, and tells him of the darkness, his hiding, and the box, at least until he grows tired. They don't care that he peed. He won't be. He won't let. He won't stay. He tries to hear more, but he can't, his breath loud, and he screams some, gasping for air until his throat feels raw and red, banging his arms and feet till they're numb. It's as if he's under the water in the tin soaking tub, everything pressed around him and squeezing, making things blurry, the sound soft then gone. And how could she leave him here, alone here in this cage? He was cold before, but it's hot and things stink. And maybe he sleeps or dreams. He knows that things die, and maybe now he'll die too. And he bangs on the box again, pushing each side of it. A spray of dirt washes in that he flicks at with his tongue and breathes. He coughs. His coughs rise the way hers do, a crumpled tail to them. And when he closes his eyes, this time the dots fade, smooth to thin ribbons, black and forgotten like something from long before. From far off, a clink comes, voices again in the dirt and the dark, and he trusts and believes none of it, calm now by the darkness, the closeless, until something else strikes the box. There's a tilting and scraping, the low sound of grunts, and the hiss of breaths blown. He stays still as she told him, waiting and not waiting, and when the top is ripped open in a flash of light, he is quiet still, cooled, saved, seen, revealed. I'm going to read one more short passage, and Danny's going to play again, and then he's going to join me here, and we're going to ask questions from you if we can see you over these lights here. So as I mentioned, so Johnny ends up in this freak show, and he's essentially sold into the freak show, which wasn't that unusual for people with human oddities. In some cases, it made their lives better. You know, they were hidden away at home. You know, their families were embarrassed by them, and you know, at the show, it could be a star. And I'm doing a number of events for this book, and I had tried to find a current sideshow performer to talk to appear with me or whatever, and I couldn't find anything. And finally, I see something in the advertised. There's going to be a sideshow in Tallahassee. You know, it was going to be at the House of Music. I'm like, great! I signed up for the VIP package so I could talk to them, and then they canceled it. But I sort of gotten the names and websites of some people, and so I reached out to this guy, and he's going to appear with me next week in Coral Gables. And his stage name is Short E Dangerously. And he has no legs. He walks on his hands. And I talked to him on the phone, told him what I wanted to do, and I said, you know, I just want to talk to you about your life. Well, what is it like when you walk in a room and everybody in there is looking at you, no matter what you do? And I said, do you like being on stage? And he said, oh, I love being on stage. He goes, it's one of the best parts of my life. So in this part of the book, this is when Johnny ends up in the freak show, and he's right when he first gets there. He's first going on stage, and he's 12 or 13 years old, and he's scared, and he doesn't know what he's supposed to do or what this is going to be. And so this is that part of the book. Find where I'm going to read here. Get behind the curtain, they're coming in. And so they are, a shuffling line of rumpled men, 3 or 10 of them before he's pulled back from view. Again, he is warm-faced, whirling once more when Tot's voice breaks and launches, amplified somehow like a god's. And here he is, gentlemen, that oddity from another land, that one of a kind, 1 in 10 million, born to an unknown mother, a gift straight from the clouds. Please welcome the one and only Johnny C., the boy with wings. Muttering and a few hand claps. And he finds himself suddenly inside the tent, the cape on his shoulders and falling down his back. Maybe Sheila pushed him or Tot has simply willed it, but he walks in as they told him, sitting and then striding from one end of the rail to the other, at first not looking, but then looking at each of them, one after one after one. He flourishes his cape, then turns his back to them and sits again in the chair. A murmur rises, different in tone from only minutes before, a few words breaking. Where is some fraud? Back in Toledo. Again, Tot's voice squeaks. She's standing next to him somehow, peering and holding a small oil lamp. Now, the moment you've waited for. Be prepared, as even grown men have been known to faint. She pauses. Don't tell your wives about this. Don't tell your children. Don't tell anyone. Another pause. He's a living, breathing monstrosity. Here he is, Johnny Cruel. He rises and, keeping his back to them, slowly drops the cape. Off his shoulders, exposing his side, over the hump on his back, and with a rush the cape falls, lying then twisted and shapeless on the ground just below. A hiss sounds behind him, new grunts and shifts. A few cries. What the? Can't be. Just putty, right? Stick it in on that boy. He stands there for a minute or two, tears dripping down his face, walks to one side and then the other before wrapping the cape back over his shoulders, running and striding past them and out. Sheila is behind the tent's wall, her eyes alive with excitement, their near fight forgotten, and he sees others watching. Zorat, Kenneth, Alfred, a few others unknown. One blonde-haired girl, a look of surprise or maybe confusion on her face, as if none of this makes even the slightest sense. He wipes at his eyes and walks on past them all. How'd it go? Sheila asks him. She's almost jumping up and down. His breath is calm. He squints up at the sky, the dried salt on his face cracking and his neck bent beneath this, fighting an impulse to laugh or to hug her. The stars form different shapes like white ink. He pulls the cape tight, feeling it catch on his wings, for isn't that what they are? Looking out at her now, he gestures towards outward and shrugs, turns his palm up, smiles. It was fine, I think. So, so Danny, I've messed up our script. I'm supposed to talk one more time, then Danny's going to play again. Then he's going to join me. So let me. Yeah, so clearly this is unrehearsed. I mean, this, you know. So let me say a few more words, and Danny will play some more. So what does it mean to be different? And you might ask me, all right, well, Mark, let me get this straight. I say, here you're a white male born in this country in this time period to parents who loved you and paid for your education. What do you know about being different? and which is a legitimate question. And I've tried to touch the place that almost everybody knows, I think. It's just that feeling of being on the outside and looking in. And almost everybody, including me, felt that. For me, it was probably middle school. I was not cool. My mother bought my clothes. I didn't have older brothers and sisters. I didn't have anybody to really tell me how to be cool. And so I remember being, kind of ridiculed and ostracized. And I finally became cooler. I don't know that I ever became cool, but it impacted my life. And so I, part of the benefit of being a lawyer and a writer is that as a lawyer, you're sort of trained to look at each side of the equation. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a right to be heard. And so I try and put myself when I write into other people's, into their point of view. In this particular book, you've all heard of cultural appropriation and all that stuff, and there are women characters in the book that I'm trying to write from the point of view of a woman. There are African American characters, and I'm trying to write from the point of view of an African American. And that's hard to do, and in some sense, I mean, you can be the judge whether I've done it well. But it's I've tried to make the characters realistic, and sometimes I see that writers, particularly Southern writers, sort of overcompensate. The black character is always the hero, and they're not the anti-hero in my book. But I tried to make them real people. They have flaws just like everybody else, and so again, you guys can be the judge of that. There's a lot of sort of spiritual and religion to the book. And so my spiritual journey, as you will, I was raised a Southern Baptist. My mom is here. She, we went to church every Sunday, and pretty much. And those we didn't were cause for celebration as a kid. Oh, thank God. And then, so like a lot of people, I got sort of got in college, got away from church, and then sort of came back. And then when I got married, my wife told me, well, I was welcome to become a Lutheran because she had no intention of becoming a Baptist. And so I became a Lutheran, and I, at first it was I liked it okay, but I remember going to the first service and like they take communion, we take communion in the Lutheran church every Sunday. And so I'm like, oh my God, all these people got to come up here. We're going to be here another half hour, So, and then the music in the Lutheran church, those of you who are Lutherans, are sort of dirges. Like where are the show tunes from the Baptist church, So, but I ended up, I taught the high school Sunday school class for 10 years, and if they ever knew what I really thought, they would have probably kicked me out of the church, much less teach we're leaving him with the children. But we, one of the things we did in the high school class, and my daughters are here, they went through this, is we went around to different churches and sort of, just to experience sort of what it's like. I mean, we went to an evangelical church, we went to a Catholic service, we went to a synagogue, went to an African American church, went to a Muslim service. And so, it was just sort of, interesting to see the kids' reactions. My son was like, why don't we have drums at our service, And we went to the Unitarian service, and my daughter said, well, did they ever mention Jesus there? And, so anyway, I hope if you read the book that I'm interested in talking to Christian audiences about the book to see their reaction. I've applied for a couple of Christian book awards, and I'm just envisioning the judges seeing this and going, oh my God, what is this? But I think it's my first book was about a woman, a black woman who claimed to be Christ returned. And I wrote that. I had no idea what I was doing. My friend Terry Lewis was kind enough to introduce me to a publisher, and somehow they published the book. But the concept I still think is a good one. How would if you're a Christian? I mean, Jesus wasn't exactly what people thought the first time around, and so why would you think it's similar the second? And so sort of play. And so Boy with Wings has a little bit of that in it too. But I will and so if you are your men's group, your church groups wants to hear from me, I'd be glad to come and talk. Or if you're in a book club, if I'm in town, I'm glad to come and do it. So with that, I'm going to ask Danny to maybe play once more, and then he is going to come and join me down here this time. Wow. So, I hadn't heard that before. So, thank you. Yeah, come on over. So just a few other things about Danny. So he is an author also, and his book is, we have some for sale over here afterwards. And he's written it's the discography of George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic, and it's one of the best sellers of this publishing, which is not a little publisher. Right. So congratulations. Yeah.
I can talk loud, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, it was published with Rowman and Littlefield. They've been recently bought out by Bloomsbury, which is the even bigger publisher, lucky for me. And yeah, it came out September of 2023, and just in those little 2 months and 15 days, it became their bestseller for the year, and now it's in the top 3 or 5 bestsellers of all time.
And he has another book coming out soon also, right?
Yeah, so they, I guess I made them a lot of money, so they want more. But they actually greenlit what's going to hopefully be a series of books, history monographs pinpointing different specific times in P-Funk history. We're really looking at like 1 year at a time. So as opposed to the authorized P-Funk song reference, which is 70 years of history, these are each going to be like pinpointed kind of really deep looks, deep dives into 1 year in P-Funk history. And the one that's coming out October 2nd, I'm really excited about. It's called Make My Funk the P-Funk, apropos. And it's about 1975 and how that year was the kind of paradigm shift for the band when they went from already being very popular, kind of underground, touring the Chipping circuit, still in station wagons, but having charting records, to landing a giant spaceship on stage with $500,000 worth of props to sold out stadiums and arenas all over the world. So 8 months that happens. So the book is about those 8 months.
So we're going to take some questions, and we can't see any of you, so we're going to have to like jump up and down. And but let me ask you just to describe sort of how you became. You had told me so you came down to like interview with George and they took you out like out in the woods to George's shack where you were thinking, what have I got myself into? So talk about that for a minute.
So I was, as Mark said before, I was classically trained. My parents were both concert pianists. I ran a piano school in New England my whole life. Like he said, it was my favorite band. I always wanted to be in that band from a very young age. And I just was persistent, very persistent, and went to shows, dropped off demos. And long story short, they enjoyed what they heard and invited me down to what was at the time his studio in Monticello. He was already living here, but he didn't have a studio here in Tallahassee. And I came down for spring break. I was attending university. I was junior, I think, or sophomore in college at University of New Hampshire, and went down to Florida, North Florida, my first time. Culture shock. I got called Kennedy about 10 times my first. And hey, Kennedy, what's up there, Kennedy? The Massachusetts plates? I was like, oh yeah, okay. But yeah, we started working with George, and they really liked what I did. And then after I graduated, he said, finish school, because he knew I was paying my own way. So finish school, do what you got to do, and then come down. We'll have something for you. No promise of the job I wanted, but some kind of something. And so I started working in the studio. I worked as a technician for a little while, and but really it was like maybe 3 months in Tallahassee, and I got the gig on the keyboard chair, and started September 2003. So it's 22 years now. Okay.
All right. So anybody, any questions? Yes, sir.
How did George end up in Tallahassee?
I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that whenever he used to finish an album way back in the day, he would always come to Florida to go fishing. And so, I know that he's an avid fisherman, and a very good one at that. And so Florida was kind of his go-to place for fishing. So I think he fell in love with Florida through that. And then he fell in love with Tallahassee. And from the times I've talked to him recently, he's like, I'm staying here. This is home. So, yeah.
Other questions? Yeah.
How did you come up with the idea for the boy with wings?
Yeah, so the question was, how did I come up with the idea for The Boy with Wings? And I've been asked this before. I don't have a super great answer. I guess, so I remember going, I'm sure my sister is here, remembers this, going to the North Florida Fair as a child, and they had, world's smallest horse, and the, crazy man from Borneo that was a drunk guy that kind of chased you around a little bit. And so I was just sort of interested in that whole, sort of area. And I told my agent at the time, I was thinking about writing a book about this, and he said, well, have you ever read this book, Geek Love? Which I had not, and I did, and boy, that is really a super book, and it was all sort of about this, and so it kind of got me thinking about, well, what could I do that sort of wasn't exactly that, and so I did a lot of research. There's all sorts of, I'm sure a lot of you know that the circuses wintered in Florida, and then it became a retirement place for a lot of circus people and sideshow people, and there's a particular town down near Bradenton called Gibsonton or Gibtown, that a lot of of sideshow performers, human oddities, retired, and there's documentaries about them, and there's the lady that's covered in hair and people like that, and there was a guy who was a giant that ran the diner there and that sort of thing, and so I just thought that it was interesting to what kind of lives did they lead, and how did this work for them, and how did they deal with it. And so that's it as much as anything. I don't know if any of you've seen the movie Nightmare Alley. The original was in the 40s, and then there was a remake with Bradley Cooper a couple of years ago, and it kind of captures this particular. This was sort of a down at the heel sideshow in my book, and that's sort of that was the way that movie was set as well. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I own the CD or the DVD of that, and I've watched it a number of times. And yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, there was a movie by Todd Browning, I think it was 1932, called Freaks. And it was all these, true human oddities, a guy with no legs, a dwarf, everything you can imagine. And they sort of take over the show because the people running it are not treating them well. And so it's really sort of the seminal, movie of way before Greatest Showman and all that, there was Freaks. And it's, it was real, real people that, that were portrayed in sideshows. Other questions? Let's see. Yes.
So I thought you did a great job of pairing the mood of the music selection with the selections that Mark read from the book. Did you guys plan that, or was it?
So we've never practiced this, like Mark said. However, I was already a fan of his work before he asked me to do this. I had read The Gendarme, and I'm sure some of you maybe have. Yeah, please. Yeah. Being an Armenian American and a grandson of genocide survivors, that over 50 people in my family were killed during the genocide, and very few escaped. Gendarme was a really, a welcome thing. Armenians, especially in the diaspora, we're just looking for anything. We're grasping towards anything that shows any sign of recognition or telling the stories. So that was like my introduction to Mark's incredible work. Boy with Wings, he gave me a copy of, and told me a little bit about what he wanted to do. And I knew right away, because I'm really a process guy. Craft is everything to me, and how an artist does what they do is very interesting and important to me. So I knew that I was going to get right into this book. I read 2 chapters a night every night until I was done. I'm very regimented. I read them at the exact same time every night, so I have the exact same mood right in between practicing regiments. So I just finished practicing a bunch of stuff of one type. I'm about to practice a bunch of other stuff, and in between I read the book. And I just had so much visceral emotion from Mark's work in general. And I think that he, not just this book, I think that his body of work deals with difference in general, being different and what that means. I think that although I haven't even read the first book, I think that all 3 of those deal with that theme in some sort of way. And so I knew that I had to be versed. I wasn't gonna just be like, oh, I'm gonna play you some music, man, and you got a book, cool, man, no. I'm gonna read this thing. And I even went back and kind of like went over it again, but I read the whole thing cover to cover, and they always make a joke about Armenians that we don't like fiction. You know what I mean? We only read nonfiction, and it's like, this didn't happen. Why do you care about this? You know what I mean? But with Mark's brand of fiction and historical fiction in general, but really with Boy with Wings, keeping that book in mind, it's really a mix of fiction and nonfiction, because you're getting so much from this very specific time in the Deep South. You're getting so much from these kind of fringe groups. There's many fringe groups, not to give too much away, but there's, you can look at The Boy and His Mother as a fringe group at the beginning. You can look at the camp, the African-American camp that he goes to for solace, that they're a fringe group in their society. And then upon finding his kind of group of others in the circus, the freak show, there's another kind of example of difference. So I worked really hard at I paired a mixture of improvisations and currently existing pieces by other people. So I wanted to match the feel of the book, and I knew the only way to do that is to obviously read it. So to me, that was the important part of the process.
Tell them how much you practice every day.
I practice about 5 to 7 hours a day. So.
Shows, doesn't it?
Well, I have 3 kids who go to 3 different schools on 3 different sides of town. So my school commute involves me waking up early. I might as well get that time in, getting my hours in. So, yeah.
Question in the back.
Hi, my question is for Mark, and it is, what advice would you give writers that are leading with fringe, marginalized groups, and fantasy?
Advice give to writers, I missed the last part.
That are doing fantasy and marginalized groups.
Okay. Well, I don't know that I have specific advice to them. So it had been recommended to me for years and years, oh, you should write a blog. And I'm like, I don't think I'm not witty enough, or I'm not, disciplined enough to do that. But for this book, I started a blog. So you can go on my website, and the very first blog post is writing advice. And so, and this isn't necessarily for science fiction or marginalized, but and I do think it's the best advice. So, and I'm paraphrasing the blog post. You can go read it, but it's first is read and read a lot and read good stuff. And then things come second nature. Then if you're used to reading really good work, and then the second is revise. It's sort of like practice. Chris Bajalian and I are going to talk. How many times do you revise a novel? I mean, I was probably, 20 revisions, 25 revisions of this. I mean, you can tell who does it and who doesn't. And so that's it. And then the other piece that I put in there is, unless you're a really, really, really good writer, don't write about sex a lot. And there's a reason there's a bad sex in fiction award, and I'm not making that up. There is one. So that's that's the other advice. So, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
For Danny, your first piece was especially beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Did you compose that?
No, I didn't. That's a very famous piece by Chick Corea, the sadly late Chick Corea, and it's called Space Circus. And I just thought it's cool because it kind of deals with that world, but in a really pensive way. So I thought I'd start with that one.
Yeah, when I asked Danny to do this, so I had in my mind sort of how I wanted to break this out, and I told him, I said, you pick the music, Danny, but it can't be like Girl from Ipanema or something that, so it's got to be something that's sort of, if not obscure, but I mean, just, so anyway, and I thought that was magnificent. I'd never heard any of that. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I've heard your Armenian folk music, Danny, and it's so beautiful, and I
Thank you.
was wondering if you were going to be playing any of those pieces based on the book that Mark wrote, and I just thought maybe that there was like some coming together of that, but I just really wanted to tell you how much I love that music.
Thank you so much. I actually incorporated into the second to last one, which is the one where he first gets into the circus, where he's kind of a mixture of an original piece that I've been playing with for years, and in the middle, I actually segue to a piece called Mayer Araks, which is an Armenian piece, and it's about the Mother River. But in this particular case, I'm kind of referencing his mother. And you got to read the book if you haven't read it to find out what the thing is with his mother. But I kind of referenced that in the middle, and being Armenian, I can't help but draw some influence, obviously, in everything I do. So yeah, thank you.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yep. Will you be including Danny in the audiobook version of Book of Rings?
It's a great idea. I think I need to contact my agent and pitch that immediately.
I would say yes.
Any other questions? Oh yeah, way in the back there.
How much of what you do in each case, the music and the writing, is you expressing yourself, and it doesn't matter what anybody thinks, and how much of it is I'm trying to write to reach the audience?
I think it's a good question for any writer. I mean, and people ask me, well, how do you know the ending of the story when you start it? More or less, I mean, I kind of have a feel for how I want it to go, but I've shifted the endings, and both in the Gendarme and in Boy with Wings. Not a lot, but a little bit, just as it got going. I thought, this would sort of work out better and that sort of thing. But I don't know that and I think Chris Bajalian would probably agree. I don't know that I write to try and reach a particular audience necessarily. It's just kind of how it comes to me, and you learn that people have very different tastes in literature. And it's a very subjective thing. It's one of the great things about it. So my wife and I we read a lot. We have similar tastes, but not exactly. In some books she loves, and some books, I don't love. But if she says this is really, really good, it's generally really, really good. So that may not be a very good answer to your question, but that's about the best I can do. There's somebody had a question over here. I can't see. Oh yeah. Hey Trish. Yeah, I mean, again, it's sort of, things have changed a lot. I mean, the heyday of the whole, the freak show itself was, probably the end of the 19th century. That was the whole P.T. Barnum stuff. And then the traveling shows sort of started at the beginning of the 20th century. And so this is set in the 30s. So it's really the end of this era, more almost. And things that were, really remarkable then, the tattooed lady, I can see one of them right outside here now. So that, that's sort of, and I think that, in a way, there's, human oddities people are sort of looked down on now if making fun of somebody or a spectacle. But on the other hand, it's still there. And so, you don't have to look far in the current environment to see certain people that are marginalized, ostracized, demonized. So to some extent it's changed, and to some extent it hasn't. We have time for maybe one or two more questions, and then, yes.
I'm sorry, one more, and it's for you, Mark. Can you just touch on the origin, the Word of South, and your founding of it?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a long answer too. So this is year 11 of Word of South, and it's year 13 of us working on it. So I thought when we started this, I would be like 5 years in, and then I'm out of there if somebody else can do this. But I'm still here, and I'm proud of it. I mean, it's a, thank you.
And if I can touch on something real quick about that, if it's okay. I'm going to embarrass Mark real quick. For the 22 years that I've lived here, I've always said that this city, though full of brilliant artists of all kinds, is lacking the necessary mechanisms that allow said artists, musicians, creatives to thrive. This is that mechanism. It is in place now. Okay, yeah, give it up to Mark Mustian.
Well, on that happy note, let's let Danny close us out here.
Oh, play one more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Danny Bedrosian, everybody.